The Galactic Empire was not a place where small disturbances went unnoticed. Every signal, every movement, every unusual anomaly was recorded, analyzed, and reported. Yet, nothing in the records compared to the sudden alert that flashed across the central command screens. A fleet of ships from Terran space, humans, was approaching the outer sectors faster than anything the Empire had seen before. For centuries, humans had been considered a minor species, scattered across a single small planet in a forgotten corner of the galaxy. They were known for their resourcefulness, yes, but not for posing any real threat to the Empire. And now, here they were, appearing as if from nowhere, and their fleet was enormous. The commanders in the central hall stared at the projections of the approaching Terran vessels. The room, a massive chamber lined with data screens and holographic maps, was filled with a tense silence. Officers whispered to each other, trying to make sense of the numbers. "This cannot be accurate," one muttered. They could not possibly have this many ships. But the projections did not lie. Every sensor reading confirmed it. Humans had gathered thousands of ships and were navigating through the stars with precision that rivaled even the Empire's most seasoned fleets. The Central Command called for an immediate meeting. The Council of Governors, Generals, and Intelligence Officers gathered to discuss the implications. Some argued for immediate military action. The outer sectors, sparsely defended, would be the first to encounter the humans. They feared that even a minor incursion could spark a rebellion or disrupt critical trade routes. Others advised caution. Humanity had been underestimated before. There were tales, centuries old, of humans surviving impossible odds, outsmarting more advanced civilizations, and finding ways to turn weaknesses into strengths. The Council could not ignore the possibility that the humans were not simply explorers. They could be a threat. While the Council debated, the sensors continued to track the Terran fleet. It moved with purpose, not randomly. It was clear that the humans knew exactly where they were going. They avoided heavily defended areas and steered through less monitored regions. Imperial spies scrambled to gather intelligence, trying to understand the humans' intentions. Were they scouting? Were they looking for resources? Or was this the beginning of a war? Every possibility seemed equally dangerous. Back on Earth, the humans were far from the political machinations of the Empire. In their command centers, scientists and military officers worked side by side, driven by necessity and curiosity. Humanity had always been resourceful, shaped by centuries of conflict, scarcity, and survival against odds that often seemed impossible. Now those qualities were being tested on a galactic scale. The fleet was not meant to conquer. It was a message, a demonstration of capability, and a safeguard for their planet. The leaders understood that any misstep could provoke the Empire into a full-scale attack, something humanity was not yet prepared to face. Despite this, there was no panic among the humans. Each ship in the fleet operated with coordination and discipline. Orders were given and followed with precision, but the leaders were aware of the weight of every decision. A single miscalculation could have devastating consequences. They had studied the Empire from afar, understanding its structure, its strengths, and its weaknesses. They knew that the Empire relied heavily on complacency, assuming no one could challenge its reach. The humans intended to prove that assumption wrong, but carefully, without unnecessary aggression. Back in the Empire, the debate continued. Some council members feared that inaction could be interpreted as weakness, encouraging other species or colonies to rise in rebellion. Others warned that a hasty attack could unite the humans in a way the Empire could not contain. There were memories of past mistakes when overconfidence had led to unexpected defeats. The room was divided and the tension was almost tangible. Every council member knew that history could judge them harshly for whichever path they chose. The humans' approach was relentless but measured. They did not send messages of hostility, but their movements were clear. They were here, they were capable, and they were prepared. Intelligence reports highlighted patterns in their navigation that suggested strategic thinking, far beyond what the Empire expected from a species considered primitive. Analysts began to whisper about Terran ingenuity, noting how humans turned apparent disadvantages into advantages. For example, small scout ships moved ahead to map hyperspace corridors while larger vessels followed a protective formation. It was the kind of coordination that could overwhelm less disciplined opponents. As the first Terran ships entered the outermost sectors, alarms blared in Imperial command centers. Citizens in nearby colonies watched from observation decks as the unfamiliar vessels passed through, sleek and unlike anything the Empire had catalogued before. The public reaction was mixed. Some were fascinated, others fearful. Propaganda agencies scrambled to craft messages that would calm the population, but the uncertainty lingered. The humans were not aggressive, yet their presence alone was enough to unsettle the Empire. The commanders convened again, and a new plan emerged. Reconnaissance followed by diplomatic assessment. A small fleet would approach the Terran vessels to determine their intentions. This was unprecedented. Never before had the Empire considered direct engagement with a species thought to be minor. The risks were immense. Any mistake could spark conflict that spread faster than anyone could control. Still, the Council recognized that ignoring the humans entirely could be just as dangerous. They had to know what they were dealing with. Meanwhile, on the Terran side, communication lines were alive with strategic discussions. They did not underestimate the Empire. They knew that if they miscalculated, their fleet could be destroyed and their homeworld left vulnerable. Yet, despite the danger, there was a quiet confidence among the Terran commanders. Their planet had survived countless crises, and humanity had a way of adapting when the odds seemed impossible. They were not here to fight blindly. They were here to navigate the tension with intelligence, caution, and courage. As both sides prepared for the inevitable encounter, the first warning signs of confrontation emerged. Imperial sensors detected patterns in the Terran fleet that suggested tactical planning, and analysts noted that humans seemed capable of anticipating Imperial maneuvers. This was troubling. Overconfidence had been the Empire's downfall before, and history had taught them to respect even minor species. The Council understood that what they were witnessing was not just a fleet of ships. It was a test of strategy, resolve, and understanding. Days passed, and the Terran fleet advanced steadily. The Empire mobilized defensive measures, positioning patrols and warning colonies. Every decision carried weight and every command was scrutinized. Yet despite the tension, there was no immediate attack. The humans moved with purpose but restraint, signaling that they were not seeking open war. At least not yet. This deliberate approach unsettled Imperial commanders who were used to clear aggression or submission. The humans were unpredictable, and that made them dangerous. By the end of the first week, it was clear to both sides that the approaching encounter would be a defining moment. The Empire had been alerted, its attention focused on Terran space, and it could not ignore what was coming. The humans, while cautious, demonstrated capability, coordination, and determination that defied expectations. Both sides understood that the next steps could determine the balance of power for years to come. What started as a simple alert had now evolved into a complex web of anticipation, strategy, and human ingenuity, and at the center of it all, both civilizations waited, knowing that the stars themselves would bear witness to the choices made in the days ahead. On Earth, far away from the busy command halls of the Galactic Empire, humans were preparing in their own way. Their fleets moved with precision, their minds focused not on war for power but on survival, exploration, and the protection of their homeworld. Humanity had faced countless challenges over the centuries, diseases that wiped out millions, wars that threatened to destroy entire cities, and natural disasters that tested their resilience. Those experiences shaped them into a people who could think fast, adapt quickly, and work together under extreme pressure. The Terran fleet was a reflection of that history. Thousands of ships, each with a specific purpose, sailed through the dark expanse of space. Some were small scout ships, fast and nimble, able to slip through dangerous territories to gather information. Others were larger vessels designed to support the fleet, carrying supplies, fuel, and equipment for repairs. The humans did not see themselves as conquerors. They had no desire to dominate anyone, but they understood that the universe was dangerous, and only those prepared could survive. On board the largest command ship, leaders studied maps and charts of the Imperial sectors. They had spent years gathering information from sensors, spies, and intercepted communications. Every decision was made with care, understanding that one mistake could provoke the Empire. They were outnumbered, yes, but they also had the advantage of unpredictability. The humans did not act like the other species the Empire had encountered. They were willing to think differently, to take risks that others would avoid, and to make plans that seemed impossible to outsiders. The atmosphere on the command ship was intense but controlled. Officers moved with purpose, passing along instructions, monitoring the fleet and communicating with Earth. Each person understood the stakes. They were not just piloting ships, they were protecting the lives of millions back home. Children were being raised with stories of resilience, of courage in the face of overwhelming odds. Those lessons were now more than just stories. They were the foundation of survival in space. Unlike the Empire, where orders often came down through layers of bureaucracy, the Terrans operated on a system that valued quick thinking and practical solutions. Problems were discussed openly, ideas were debated, and the best solutions were implemented immediately. This made them faster and more adaptable than many of the Empire's forces, who were used to rigid hierarchies and formal procedures. It was a quiet strength, one that the humans relied on heavily as they navigated through territories where the Empire might be watching. The humans had not arrived at this moment by chance. They had prepared for decades. Scientists had developed propulsion systems that allowed their ships to travel vast distances quickly. Engineers had created navigation systems that could chart unknown territories with accuracy. Military experts had trained crews to handle unexpected attacks, sabotage, and emergencies. All of these efforts were combined in a single, careful strategy. The humans were showing the galaxy that they could not be underestimated. Even as they moved toward Imperial space, there was no arrogance in their actions. Leaders on the command ship emphasized caution and observation. Every scan, every course adjustment, every maneuver was calculated to avoid unnecessary conflict. They were aware of the Empire's power and the potential consequences of miscalculation. They were careful to avoid causing panic or appearing aggressive, yet their very presence in these sectors was a statement of capability. Humans were not just visiting, they were demonstrating that they could operate on a galactic scale. The crew often reflected on what had brought them to this point. Generations had lived in a world where survival required creativity and cooperation. They had learned to work together under pressure, to solve problems quickly, and to think beyond conventional solutions. In many ways, space was just another extension of those lessons. The challenges were bigger, the consequences more serious, but the approach remained the same: careful planning, teamwork, and adaptability. As the fleet approached the outer edges of Imperial space, humans monitored every signal. They intercepted communications, watched sensor readings, and studied the positions of Imperial patrols. They were learning not just where the Empire was, but how it operated. Each observation was analyzed and used to improve their strategy. They understood that knowledge was power, and they were gathering it at every opportunity. Despite the high stakes, there were moments of quiet reflection among the crew. They would gather in small groups, looking out at the stars and consider what it meant to be part of something larger than themselves. They were explorers, protectors, and pioneers. They were also human, feeling fear, hope, and determination in equal measure. The enormity of the galaxy was humbling, yet it also inspired a deep sense of purpose. Not all humans were in space. Back on Earth, leaders coordinated resources, prepared defenses, and communicated with their fleet. They ensured that everything ran smoothly, from fuel supplies to medical care. Every decision had ripple effects across the planet and the fleet. They were aware that the Empire might respond aggressively, and they prepared contingency plans for every possible scenario. Yet they also knew that panic would do more harm than good. Calm, organized action was their greatest strength. The humans' careful approach did not go unnoticed by the Empire. Imperial intelligence began reporting unusual coordination, precise navigation, and strategic movements.
Analysts noted that the humans did not simply rush into confrontation. They moved deliberately, often avoiding direct conflict while asserting their presence.
This was confusing to the Empire's commanders, who expected simpler patterns from what they had long considered a primitive species. Humanity's ability to act strategically and independently was reshaping the Empire's assumptions. The Terrans were also aware of the psychological impact of their presence. They understood that fear and uncertainty could be as powerful as weapons. By demonstrating competence, calm, and coordination, they were sending a message without firing a single shot. Every move was calculated not just for survival but for influence. They were proving that humans could stand among the stars, not as victims or pawns, but as equals capable of shaping events around them. As the fleet moved closer to the frontier sectors, the humans maintained communication with Earth. Leaders shared updates, strategies, and concerns. There was no room for ego or personal ambition. Decisions were made collectively based on the best information available. The people of Earth understood that they were part of something historic, something that would be remembered for generations. This gave them a sense of purpose and determination that no fear could overcome. The days passed and humans continued their cautious advance. They avoided Imperial patrols, but they also studied them carefully. Each observation was recorded and analyzed, building a picture of how the Empire operated in practice, not just in theory. Humans were patient and disciplined, aware that haste could lead to disaster. They moved with the knowledge that every action had consequences, and that understanding their opponents was just as important as any technology or weapon they carried. Even among the crew, the tension was constant. Sleep was irregular, meals were simple, and rest periods were brief. Yet there was a shared sense of duty and resilience. They reminded each other why they were here: to protect their planet, to explore new territories, and to show that humanity could thrive even in the face of overwhelming odds. That belief gave them strength, focus, and courage in a situation that could have paralyzed lesser beings. As Part 2 drew to a close, the humans were fully aware of the challenges ahead. The Empire was vast, powerful, and unpredictable. Yet the humans were not intimidated. They had faced danger before, and they had always found ways to endure, adapt, and succeed. Their journey into Imperial space was not just about survival, it was a statement. Humans were here, capable, determined, and ready to navigate whatever challenges the galaxy might throw at them. And as the stars stretched endlessly ahead, the humans continued their advance, each decision, each maneuver, a reflection of centuries of resilience and ingenuity. They were not merely moving through space, they were making history, quietly, carefully, and with purpose, aware that the eyes of the galaxy were watching. Back in the heart of the Galactic Empire, a storm of uncertainty was brewing. The alert about the approaching Terran fleet had reached the highest levels of command, and the sense of unease was palpable. Generals, governors, and intelligence officers all gathered in the Empire's central war chamber, a massive room filled with glowing maps, blinking lights, and holographic displays of ships and star systems. Every eye in the room was focused on the projections of the humans' movements. The Empire had faced many threats in its long history. Invasions, rebellions, and rival species had tested its strength again and again. Yet the humans presented a problem unlike any before. They were clever, organized, and unpredictable. For centuries, humans had been underestimated, regarded as a minor species barely capable of traveling beyond their home planet. Now all those assumptions were being challenged. The human fleet's precision, strategy, and coordination were making even the most seasoned Imperial officers uneasy. Debate erupted among the council members. Some argued for immediate military action. "We cannot wait," one general insisted, slamming a fist on the table. "If we let them advance any further, they could disrupt our trade routes, inspire rebellion in the outer sectors, or worse. We must show strength now or risk appearing weak." Others, however, counseled caution. "We do not yet understand their intentions," another officer replied. "They have shown no aggression, only capability. A rash attack could provoke them into full-scale war before we are ready." The disagreement was more than just strategy. It revealed the Empire's internal divisions. Some members of the council were motivated by fear, seeing every human movement as a threat. Others saw opportunity, considering the possibility of studying Terran technology and intelligence for their own benefit. Politics had always been a dangerous game in the Empire, but now it had taken on a new urgency. Decisions made in this room could affect the fate of millions across countless star systems. Spies and intelligence networks were working around the clock. Imperial analysts monitored the humans, studying their fleet movements, communications, and navigation patterns. They were trying to predict what humans might do next. But the more they observed, the more they realized that humans did not fit into the patterns the Empire had come to expect. Humans were not reckless. They were not predictable. They were not bound by the rigid strategies the Empire had seen from other species. Every move seemed calculated, yet flexible, designed to adapt to whatever situation arose. One of the council's analysts spoke up, pointing to a holographic display. "They are avoiding conflict, yet advancing steadily. Each ship has a clear purpose. Their formation is not random. They anticipate our patrols, avoid heavily defended routes, and yet they assert control over key sectors without firing a shot. This is strategic thinking beyond what we expected from them. Murmurs of surprise filled the chamber. Many had expected humans to act impulsively as primitive beings often did, but these observations contradicted centuries of assumptions. The Council knew that hesitation had risks. Some outer colonies had already reported sightings of Terran ships. Citizens were anxious, unsure of what to expect. Merchants worried about trade, military outposts feared confrontation, and governors worried that their authority could be challenged. The empire was vast, but its borders were not invincible. Even a small human incursion could ripple through the colonies, creating fear and uncertainty. The Council could not ignore this. The generals proposed mobilizing fleets to intercept the humans immediately. They suggested sending well-armed cruisers to block key hyperspace lanes and enforce territorial control. Yet others cautioned that such action might be exactly what humans wanted, provoking a response to gauge the Empire's capabilities. The room was filled with tension. Every option seemed risky, and every decision could have far-reaching consequences. The weight of history pressed down on them. Meanwhile, the Council debated the possibility of diplomacy. Could the humans be reasoned with? Could negotiations prevent conflict? Some Council members argued that a measured approach might allow the Empire to learn more about Terran technology and strategy without engaging in combat. Others warned that any attempt at diplomacy could be perceived as weakness, emboldening not only humans but also other species who might challenge Imperial authority. The debate continued late into the night with no clear answer. Imperial officers began running simulations, testing different scenarios. They considered blocking the Terran fleet, engaging in small skirmishes, or attempting to communicate directly. Each simulation revealed potential failures, showing that the humans were capable of adapting to unexpected moves. The Empire realized that overconfidence could be disastrous. A misstep could allow humans to exploit weaknesses that no one had anticipated. The sense of urgency grew, but so did the awareness that brute force alone would not be enough. As the days passed, the humans continued their advance. Imperial patrols reported that Terran ships were avoiding direct conflict, but maneuvering with incredible precision. Every engagement, whether accidental or planned, showed tactical awareness. Analysts noted that humans seemed to think several moves ahead, anticipating responses and adjusting accordingly. This was not behavior the Empire had expected, and it forced the Council to reconsider long-held beliefs about human capability. Tensions inside the Empire escalated further. Frontier governors sent urgent messages warning that local populations were becoming anxious. Merchants feared economic disruption. Military commanders feared a surprise attack. And the Council itself became divided, with arguments growing heated. The Empire was vast, but its power was concentrated in distant central systems. The outer sectors were often thinly defended, and humans had already demonstrated their ability to operate there with skill. The Council realized that the humans could challenge the Empire in ways no one had imagined. Despite the uncertainty, some Council members sought to understand humans on a deeper level. They analyzed historical records, noting that humans had survived countless crises on their homeworld. From natural disasters to wars, humans had a history of resilience, adaptability, and problem-solving. They did not rely solely on technology or brute force. They relied on ingenuity, cooperation, and the ability to learn quickly. These qualities, previously underestimated, now made humans a potential threat the Empire could not ignore. The Council's attention turned to the psychological impact of the humans' presence. Humans were operating with confidence yet restraint. They were asserting themselves without aggression, and this caused anxiety throughout the Empire. Leaders realized that humans were challenging assumptions about power, strategy, and control. They were not merely a fleet, they were a statement, and the Empire had never faced a species capable of making such a statement without firing a single shot. Faced with this reality, the Empire made a critical decision. They would prepare for multiple contingencies. Fleets would be positioned strategically across the outer sectors. Communication networks would be reinforced. Intelligence gathering would be intensified. At the same time, a small diplomatic team was assembled, tasked with monitoring human movements and attempting to understand their motives. The Empire would not act recklessly, but it would not remain passive either. Every move would be measured, deliberate, and aimed at maintaining control without provoking an unnecessary conflict. While the council strategized, ordinary citizens of the Empire observed the changes around them. Merchants noticed increased patrols in trade lanes. Scientists and engineers were called upon to support military operations. Families whispered about the humans who were coming. Fear, curiosity, and anticipation spread, touching every corner of Imperial society. For the first time, many began to question the Empire's assumption of invulnerability. Humanity's arrival had shaken not only military strategy, but the confidence of an entire civilization. As Part 3 progressed, it became clear that the Galactic Empire faced a turning point. The humans were not just advancing through space, they were challenging long-held beliefs, testing strategies, and exposing vulnerabilities. The Council understood that future decisions could determine the balance of power for years to come. Every option carried risk, every decision demanded foresight, and every move would be scrutinized by history. In the shadow of these decisions, the humans continued their advance, unaware of the full extent of the Empire's debate. Their actions, cautious yet deliberate, were shaping the perceptions of an entire civilization. The Empire realized that it could no longer view humans as minor or insignificant. They were a force that demanded respect, attention, and careful consideration. And as the Council prepared for what might come next, the tension in the Empire grew, setting the stage for encounters that could change the galaxy forever. By the end of this phase, the Empire had recognized an uncomfortable truth. Humans were not just another species to manage or ignore. They were intelligent, resourceful, and capable of challenging centuries of assumed dominance. The Council knew that the coming days would require careful calculation, courage, and adaptability. The humans had arrived, and the Empire had been forced to pay attention. For the first time, a sense of uncertainty, even fear, began to creep into the heart of one of the galaxy's most powerful civilizations. The day of first contact arrived quietly, almost unexpectedly. Neither the humans nor the Galactic Empire sought conflict, but both knew the moment was inevitable. On the edge of Imperial space, where the outermost patrols kept a watchful eye, a human scouting vessel appeared. It was sleek, smaller than the Empire's battle cruisers, and designed for speed and observation rather than aggression. Yet its presence caused alarms to blare across the Imperial command centers, signaling that the moment of truth had come. The Empire responded immediately. A battlecruiser, massive and heavily armed, was dispatched to intercept the human ship. Its journey through the stars was precise, calculated, and deliberate. On board, the officers prepared for confrontation. They had trained for this moment, imagining the humans as desperate or reckless. But as they approached, they realized something unexpected. The humans were calm, deliberate, and entirely unprovocative. There was no aggressive maneuvering, no weapons raised, no reckless behavior. Just confidence, intelligence, and purpose. From the human perspective, the encounter was handled with equal care. Their command team had anticipated Imperial reactions. They understood that approaching too quickly could be seen as hostile, while hesitation might appear weak. They maintained open communication lines, broadcasting a calm, clear message. They sought only passage and observation, not war. Their tone was firm but polite, precise but human. They conveyed authority, not arrogance. They were explorers, navigators, and protectors, aware that a single mistake could ignite a war they did not want. On the Imperial cruiser, the crew was tense. Some officers wanted to fire immediately, to assert dominance and prevent any perceived intrusion. Others hesitated, unsure if aggression was wise. The humans' confidence was unnerving. They were a species long considered insignificant, yet here they were, operating with a strategy that rivaled the Empire's best-trained crews. Their calm, measured approach made it difficult to justify immediate hostility. It was clear that these humans were not the reckless species the Empire had imagined. They were organized, intelligent, and capable of adapting on the fly. The first communication exchange was brief but charged with tension. Humans explained that they were exploring hyperspace routes and had no intention of interfering with Imperial operations. They requested safe passage and offered to share limited data to avoid misunderstandings. Their words were deliberate, each one chosen to convey respect without showing weakness. The Empire's officers listened, analyzing tone, phrasing, and intent. It was a delicate situation. A single misinterpretation could lead to open conflict. For hours, the two sides maneuvered near each other. The humans kept their ships in tight formations, demonstrating precision and discipline. They scanned the Imperial cruiser carefully, noting weapon placements, defensive systems, and patrol patterns. Every movement was calculated, designed to avoid aggression while asserting capability. Meanwhile, the Imperial cruiser maintained a defensive posture, prepared to respond if the humans deviated from the expected protocols. Both sides were cautious, each aware that this encounter could define their future relationship. Within the Empire, the first reports of the humans' conduct caused a mixture of awe and concern. Analysts noted that humans were thinking strategically, adapting to the Imperial presence and avoiding unnecessary risks. This behavior contradicted centuries of assumptions. Humans were proving that they could operate independently, think ahead, and respond intelligently to challenges. The Council in the Central Chamber watched the situation unfold. Realizing that this encounter would be more than a simple border patrol, it was a test of strategy, diplomacy, and understanding. The humans were also observing the Empire closely. They studied the cruiser's movement, the communication patterns, and the responses of its crew. They were learning how the Empire made decisions, how it reacted to uncertainty, and how it projected power. Every observation was noted and analyzed, providing valuable insight for future interactions. Yet their actions remained careful, measured, and non-threatening. They were not here to provoke. They were here to understand and to demonstrate that humanity had reached a level of capability the Empire could not ignore. Tension grew as hours passed. Both sides were aware of the fragile balance. A single error, a misfired weapon, a misunderstood command, or an uncalculated maneuver could ignite a battle neither side wanted. Yet in this tension, a quiet respect began to emerge. Humans were showing that intelligence and strategy could match sheer firepower, while the Empire began to recognize that not all challenges could be overcome with force alone. The encounter became as much psychological as it was physical, a test of patience, observation, and understanding. On the human side, the crew reflected on what this moment meant. They were aware that their actions were being scrutinized, that every decision could have far-reaching consequences. Yet they moved with confidence grounded in preparation, training, and collective experience. Humans had survived crises before on Earth and beyond. They had faced disease, war, and scarcity. They had adapted, learned, and thrived. Space was just another test, and they approached it with the same determination that had carried them through countless challenges. The Imperial officers, for their part, were forced to reconsider assumptions. They had long believed humans to be primitive, predictable, and easily managed. The encounter challenged that belief. Humans were neither reckless nor simple. They were strategic, intelligent, and capable of independent thought. They were not behaving as the Empire expected. The experience created unease, but it also inspired cautious respect. For the first time, the Empire recognized that humans could be equals, not just subjects to be managed or dismissed. After careful negotiation, both sides reached a cautious understanding. The humans were granted passage, provided they adhered to certain protocols. The Empire observed closely, ready to respond if boundaries were crossed. The humans respected the conditions, maintaining discipline and transparency in their movements. It was a delicate balance of trust, caution, and strategy. Neither side sought confrontation, yet both had made it clear that they were prepared for consequences if the terms were violated. This first contact had far-reaching effects. Within the Empire, it sparked debates about how to handle future encounters. Diplomacy had worked, but it required patience, observation, and careful judgment. Analysts and council members began re-evaluating long-held assumptions about human capability. They realized that humans were not just a curiosity. They were a force that demanded careful consideration. Across the outer sectors, news of the encounter spread, inspiring awe, fear, and a growing sense that the galaxy had changed forever. For the humans, the encounter confirmed that patience, strategy, and intelligence could achieve what aggression could not. They had made their presence known, observed Imperial capabilities, and avoided unnecessary conflict. The experience also reinforced their confidence in collective action, careful planning, and respect for unknown powers. Every decision, every maneuver, and every communication had been an exercise in demonstrating capability without provocation. They had achieved a delicate balance, proving that humans could navigate dangerous situations with wisdom and strategy. As the encounter concluded, both sides withdrew, but the impact lingered. The Empire had learned that humans could not be underestimated. Humans had proven they could operate with skill, intelligence, and caution even in the presence of overwhelming power. The stage was set for future interactions that would be defined by strategy, diplomacy, and observation rather than sheer force. Both civilizations had gained insight, and both had recognized the potential for future tension or cooperation. The first contact marked a turning point. Humans had arrived in Imperial space not with aggression, but with purpose. They had shown intelligence, discipline, and courage, challenging assumptions and demonstrating capability. The Empire had been forced to pay attention, to reassess strategies, and to confront the reality that humans were no longer a minor species. They were a presence that demanded recognition and respect. In the days following the encounter, the humans continued their journey, carefully observing, learning, and adapting. They maintained communication with Earth, shared observations, and adjusted strategies based on new information. Every action was deliberate, every maneuver calculated, and every decision made with awareness of the delicate balance between diplomacy and conflict. They were explorers, protectors, and strategists, fully aware that the galaxy was watching. Meanwhile, the Empire recalibrated its approach. Diplomatic teams monitored human movements, military forces remained alert, and analysts continued to study the humans' behavior. The Council understood that first contact was not the end. It was the beginning of a new era. Humans had proven themselves capable of operating in Imperial space, and the Empire would have to consider them in all future decisions. The challenge was no longer theoretical. It was real, immediate, and unavoidable. As Part 4 drew to a close, both civilizations reflected on what had been learned. Humans had demonstrated intelligence, patience, and adaptability. The Empire had realized the limits of assumptions and the importance of strategy over brute force. The encounter had been tense, cautious, and measured, but it had also been a test of you. After the first cautious contact, tension between humans and the Galactic Empire began to grow. Neither side wanted outright war, yet both were aware that the fragile peace could collapse at any moment. The humans continued their journey through the outer sectors, carefully monitoring Imperial patrols and mapping hyperspace routes. Their goal was still exploration and observation, but every movement was deliberate, showing the Empire that humans were capable of thinking ahead, planning carefully, and acting with purpose. Imperial intelligence officers watched the humans closely. Every formation, every maneuver, every communication was recorded and analyzed. Analysts began to notice a pattern. The humans were not just moving randomly or reacting, they were strategizing. They anticipated Imperial patrols, avoided heavily defended areas, and used clever tactics to assert presence without confrontation. The Council realized that humans could be unpredictable in ways the Empire had not anticipated. Unlike other species they had dominated, humans were capable of independent thought, innovation, and rapid adaptation. In the colonies near the frontier, news of human activity spread quickly. Citizens and merchants observed unfamiliar ships in the skies and hyperspace corridors, and rumors began to circulate. Some were fascinated by the humans' advanced technology and precise navigation. Others were worried that a conflict could erupt at any moment, disrupting trade or endangering lives. Imperial governors tried to reassure the population, but the uncertainty was impossible to ignore. Humanity's arrival was shaking confidence, not just in the outer sectors but across the Empire. The humans' strategy relied on a careful balance between caution and assertion. Small scouting ships moved ahead to chart hyperspace corridors, while larger vessels provided support and supplies. They avoided Imperial forces when possible, yet their presence in key sectors demonstrated capability. Even minor encounters were opportunities for humans to observe, learn, and adapt. Each crew member understood the stakes. They were not just navigating ships. They were shaping the future of their species' presence in the galaxy. Occasionally, skirmishes occurred, though neither side sought full-scale engagement. A human ship might be confronted by an Imperial patrol, and careful maneuvering would prevent shots from being fired. Humans would demonstrate tactical skill, outmaneuvering, retreating when necessary, and using intelligence rather than force. Imperial forces, on the other hand, were forced to adapt to unexpected strategies, realizing that aggression alone would not guarantee control. Each encounter reinforced the humans' reputation for ingenuity and the Empire's respect for their capability. Behind the scenes, humans coordinated carefully with Earth. Every observation, every encounter, and every adjustment was reported back to their command centers. Strategists studied Imperial behavior patterns, looking for weaknesses, predicting responses, and refining tactics. The humans were learning quickly, combining past experiences with careful observation. Their approach was patient, calculated, and focused on long-term objectives rather than immediate gains. They understood that rushing into conflict could jeopardize everything. Within the Empire, the Council struggled with internal conflict. Some members pushed for immediate military action, arguing that hesitation was dangerous. Others insisted on caution, noting that humans were clever and could turn aggression against them. Simulations were run repeatedly, testing hypothetical scenarios and potential outcomes. Each simulation revealed vulnerabilities the humans could exploit. The Empire began to understand that brute force might not be sufficient to control or contain them. Humans could anticipate, adapt, and innovate in ways that traditional Imperial forces could not always counter. The rising tension affected everyday life across the frontier sectors. Merchants feared trade disruptions. Colonists worried about potential skirmishes. Military officers stayed on high alert, ready to respond at a moment's notice. The presence of humans was not just a military challenge, it was a psychological one. People had grown accustomed to the Empire's dominance and predictable order. Humans introduced uncertainty, demonstrating that a small, determined species could disrupt assumptions and force caution, even in the heart of one of the galaxy's greatest powers. In response, humans carefully reinforced their positions. Supply ships were coordinated to ensure that fleets could operate in remote sectors without running low on fuel or provisions. Crews were trained to handle unexpected emergencies, from mechanical failures to potential ambushes. Every contingency was considered, every possible scenario anticipated. The humans' discipline and preparation impressed even those within their own ranks, reminding everyone that their survival depended on intelligence, teamwork, and careful planning. The Empire tried to test the humans' limits. Patrols were increased, minor roadblocks were set up, and Imperial forces attempted to monitor human activity more closely. Yet, the humans responded with caution and strategy, avoiding unnecessary conflict while still asserting presence in key sectors. It became clear that the humans were not simply passive travelers. They were capable of managing high-pressure situations, making decisions under uncertainty, and using intelligence to influence outcomes without aggression. Even small skirmishes became lessons for both sides. Humans observed Imperial tactics, noted patterns in fleet movements, and adapted their strategies. Imperial officers, in turn, began to recognize that humans were not behaving as the Empire expected. Humans were resourceful, disciplined, and capable of independent thinking. They could respond quickly to unexpected threats, learn from each encounter, and improve their strategy continuously. These lessons would shape both human and Imperial approaches in the coming months. Amid the tension, humans also focused on morale and cohesion within their fleet. Crew members were encouraged to share observations, propose solutions, and support one another. Leadership emphasized calm, clear communication, and careful planning. Unlike many Imperial operations, which relied on strict hierarchy and obedience, humans valued collaboration and adaptability. This approach allowed them to operate efficiently under pressure, handle unexpected challenges, and maintain confidence even in high-stakes encounters. Imperial commanders began to recognize that humans were teaching them new lessons as well. Their unpredictability, patience, and careful planning forced the Empire to consider alternatives to brute force. Diplomacy, observation, and cautious strategy became more appealing. Humans were not aggressive, yet they influenced the Empire's behavior simply by being capable and determined. This subtle shift in power dynamics created uncertainty, forcing the Empire to reevaluate traditional assumptions about dominance, control, and threat assessment. As weeks passed, humans advanced slowly but steadily. They avoided confrontation whenever possible, yet their presence in the outer sectors continued to grow. Each sector they entered became an opportunity to gather intelligence, observe Imperial forces, and adapt strategies for future operations. They demonstrated that intelligence, discipline, and preparation could achieve as much as or more than firepower alone. Their success was not measured in victories but in survival, influence, and the ability to operate effectively under pressure. Throughout the Empire, citizens and officers alike took note. The humans' presence challenged assumptions and forced reflection. Analysts studied their tactics, leaders questioned previous strategies, and ordinary citizens wondered if the humans might change the balance of power across the galaxy. The humans were not just visitors, they were a force demonstrating resilience, adaptability, and intelligence. Their actions created a ripple effect that affected every corner of the Empire, reminding everyone that a small, determined species could make a significant impact. For the humans, every decision reinforced lessons about patience, strategy, and cooperation. They were aware that each encounter could have long-term consequences, yet they moved with confidence. Their actions emphasized intelligence over aggression, preparation over improvisation, and observation over rash decisions. They were explorers, strategists, and guardians of their people, understanding that their survival depended not on domination, but on careful, deliberate action. By the end of this period, both sides had learned valuable lessons. Humans had proven their ability to operate in hostile space, anticipate challenges, and adapt under pressure. The Empire had learned that humans were capable, resourceful, and unpredictable. Both civilizations understood that the coming months would require careful strategy, observation, and perhaps the delicate balance between confrontation and cooperation. The stage was set for decisions that could shape the galaxy's future, and every action taken would resonate far beyond the outer sectors. The rising tension was not just about ships or fleets, it was about perception, intelligence, and understanding. Humans had shown that they could influence outcomes simply by being capable and disciplined. The Empire had begun to realize that force alone would not secure control. Both sides were preparing for what could come next, aware that the next moves might determine the balance of power in the galaxy for years to come.
After weeks of careful observation, cautious encounters, and tense maneuvers, the Galactic Empire faced a decision it could no longer delay. The humans had proven themselves capable, intelligent, and resilient. They had navigated the outer sectors with precision, avoided unnecessary conflict, and adapted to every challenge the Empire presented. Their discipline and ingenuity had forced Imperial leaders to reconsider everything they thought they knew about humanity. For centuries, humans had been dismissed as a minor species, but now their presence demanded recognition and respect. Within the Empire's central chamber, council members debated the next steps. Some still argued for a show of force, insisting that humans could not be allowed to operate unchecked. Others pointed out the lessons of recent encounters. Humans were not aggressive conquerors, but capable strategists who valued observation, preparation, and careful decision-making. Any rash action could provoke the very conflict the Empire sought to avoid. The room was filled with tension as centuries of pride clashed with the reality unfolding before them. Meanwhile, human leaders continued their disciplined approach. They maintained patrols of their fleets, mapped hyperspace corridors, and monitored Imperial activity closely. Every decision was deliberate. They were aware that the Empire could strike at any time, yet they also knew that provoking aggression would serve no purpose. Their strategy was based on careful planning, observation, and the demonstration of competence rather than dominance. Each move sent a clear message. Humans were capable, organized, and ready to defend themselves if necessary, but they sought stability rather than war. The outer sectors became a zone of cautious coexistence. Humans moved with precision, their ships operating in coordinated formations that minimized risk while maximizing observation. Imperial forces maintained patrols but avoided unnecessary engagement, recognizing that the humans' behavior did not warrant open conflict. Both sides were learning from each other. Humans studied Imperial tactics, command structures, and fleet coordination, while the Empire analyzed human decision-making, adaptability, and resilience. It was a silent dialogue, conducted through movement, observation, and restraint. For the citizens of the Empire, the presence of humans became a topic of fascination and anxiety. Merchants observed the newcomers navigating trade lanes with remarkable efficiency. Colonists whispered about their discipline and skill. Military officers noted that even in tense situations, humans avoided reckless action and responded strategically to challenges. Across the outer sectors, the humans' reputation grew, not as invaders, but as a capable and intelligent species that could not be dismissed. Their actions created both admiration and concern, forcing the Empire to reconsider centuries of assumptions. Human leaders, while focused on their mission, also considered the broader implications of their presence. They understood that every decision had consequences not only for their fleet, but for their homeworld and future generations. The humans had come to demonstrate capability, resilience, and intelligence, not to dominate or subjugate. Their strategy emphasized survival, observation, and cautious engagement. They moved as a unit, relying on teamwork, careful planning, and adaptability to navigate a galaxy that was vast, complex, and unpredictable. Within the Empire, Council members gradually reached a consensus. The humans had demonstrated restraint, discipline, and strategic thinking. They were capable of navigating the outer sectors independently, yet they did not seek to expand aggressively or provoke conflict. Recognizing this, the Council decided on a formal decree. Terran space was to be acknowledged as off-limits, and human operations in certain sectors would be respected. This decision was unprecedented. For centuries, the Empire had assumed dominance over the outer regions, but the arrival of humans had challenged that assumption and forced a new approach. When the decree was announced, Imperial fleets maintained a cautious distance, ensuring that humans were not threatened while still monitoring activity. Diplomatic teams opened communication channels, establishing protocols for future encounters. The goal was not friendship, but understanding and coexistence. The humans, for their part, adhered strictly to the guidelines, demonstrating respect for the Empire's authority while maintaining their own operational independence. This careful balance created a tense but stable peace, the result of discipline, strategy, and mutual recognition of capability. The humans reflected on the outcome with quiet satisfaction. They had achieved their objectives without unnecessary aggression. Their presence had been acknowledged, their abilities respected, and their strategic approach validated. Yet they were aware that the peace was delicate. The Empire was vast, powerful, and unpredictable, and future challenges could arise at any moment. Their success was not measured by conquest or dominance, but by survival, influence, and the ability to operate effectively in a complex, high-stakes environment. Across the Empire, the decree created ripples of understanding and reassessment. Analysts continued to study human behavior, noting patterns of strategic thinking, adaptability, and disciplined action. Citizens and military officers alike began to recognize that humans were not a threat to be crushed, but a capable species whose presence demanded respect. The outer sectors, once considered secure and predictable, now required careful attention, diplomacy, and strategic planning. Humanity's arrival had changed the rules of engagement across the galaxy. Despite the cautious peace, tension remained. Both sides understood that the balance could shift if either acted recklessly. Humans continued to navigate the outer sectors with vigilance, maintaining observation and coordination, while the Empire monitored activity without direct confrontation. This period of adjustment allowed both civilizations to learn from each other, understand capabilities, and establish a framework for coexistence. The galaxy was no longer dominated solely by the Empire's power. It had been reshaped by the presence of a species once considered minor. For the humans, the experience reinforced lessons about patience, strategy, and collective responsibility. Every decision, maneuver, and observation had consequences that extended far beyond the immediate situation. Their actions demonstrated that intelligence, planning, and discipline could achieve stability and recognition without the need for aggressive force. Humans had shown that survival and influence in the galaxy depended not only on power, but also on understanding, adaptability, and the ability to navigate uncertainty. The Empire, in turn, had learned to respect capability beyond raw firepower. The humans' presence forced a reevaluation of long-held assumptions and strategies. Leaders realized that dominance alone could not guarantee stability or compliance. Diplomacy, observation, and careful judgment were equally important. The Council acknowledged that humans were a force to be considered in future planning, not merely a curiosity or minor species. This understanding marked a shift in imperial strategy and perception, acknowledging the complexity and capability of a species they had once dismissed. Over time, a delicate equilibrium emerged. Humans operated within designated sectors, exploring, mapping, and maintaining readiness, while the Empire monitored activity and ensured that no boundaries were crossed. Both civilizations respected the tacit understanding that had been established through patience, observation, and discipline. Neither sought conflict, yet both were prepared for it if necessary. This balance required constant vigilance, careful decision-making, and mutual recognition of each other's capabilities. In the outer sectors, the humans' presence became normalized. Colonists observed their disciplined operations, trade routes were carefully coordinated to avoid misunderstandings, and imperial patrols adapted to the new reality. Humans were no longer a distant curiosity. They were part of the operational fabric of the galaxy. Their arrival had reshaped expectations, strategies, and perceptions across the Empire, highlighting the importance of intelligence, adaptability, and careful planning. As Part 6 drew to a close, both civilizations reflected on the lessons of the past weeks. Humans had demonstrated capability, resilience, and strategic intelligence. The Empire had recognized the limits of assumptions and the need for careful diplomacy alongside military strategy. A tense but stable peace was established, one built on mutual respect, observation, and careful coordination. The galaxy had changed, not through conquest or aggression, but through the demonstration of intelligence, discipline, and strategic action. The humans' journey through imperial space was more than exploration. It was a statement. They had shown that even a species once considered minor could navigate complex challenges, earn recognition, and assert presence through skill, patience, and strategic thinking. The Empire had learned to respect this capability, adjusting its assumptions and strategies accordingly. Both civilizations had emerged more aware, cautious, and prepared for the future. And so, the stars above the outer sectors remained quiet, yet charged with potential. Humans continued their careful operations, learning, observing, and preparing for what might come next. The Empire maintained vigilance, analyzing every movement, ready to respond if necessary. Between these two forces, a delicate balance had been achieved, a balance that depended on discipline, strategy, and understanding. The galaxy had been forever changed by the